After finishing off Ganon and watching the credits roll at the end of my last session with Zelda, I was greeted by a message that said, "Another quest will start from here." I wondered what that meant, and jumped in for a few more minutes to see what state my save game was in. Link had returned to his humble beginnings, but as I explored level 1, larger differences became apparent. I decided I wanted to dig deeper into this second quest, as it seems to be colloquially referred to, and see how far the differences go. Turns out they go pretty far, and I think too far in some ways for me. A quick production note that unfortunately my capture of the first couple of hours of the second quest was lost, thanks to a mistake on my part with the capture software I was using. Fortunately, after a quick search, it turned out there was a way to start a new game on the second quest by naming your save file Zelda. I used that to replay the early parts of the game I'd lost, and then just continued from there on the new file. Level 1 had been an obvious first destination, so that's where I got started in earnest. Level 1 is in the same location in the second quest as it is originally, but its layout is significantly different, as are the enemies within. The skeletons shoot magic swords that deal 2 full hearts of damage. Dealing with multiple blue gorillas was incredibly difficult, in spots with 2 to 4 fire statues shooting at me. With just 3 hearts and the basic sword, I immediately found it challenging to survive, and tried to do what fighting I could to get health and bomb drops. I soon got the sense that these items were dropping less frequently this time around, at least health, but it's hard to say for sure. I already needed to use my prior knowledge of bombing walls and where to do so to find everything, even in this first dungeon. It took a couple of lucky drops, a stopwatch, and a fairy to finally get me through the last 2 rooms. After level 1, I headed over to scope out the original location of level 2 and found something different. There was a pond where the entrance to the dungeon had been, so I couldn't just dive right in. This reminded me of the original level 7, so maybe I needed a flute here to reveal the entrance. The level 1 item had once again been the boomerang, so there wasn't anything I could do here for now. Continuing down the list, I headed for level 3. This screen was also different and contained only a cave shop. Now what? I had all my knowledge from the first run through the game, so I started visiting points of interest. One of the closest to the old level 3 location was the hidden shop with the blue ring. In this same spot, this time, I didn't find the shop, I found the entrance to level 2. Level 2 turned out to be pretty brutal. Knights started showing up, and that wasn't the worst thing. I had some horrible encounters with the mini-boss and spike traps. I'd already been dying my way through things, and that continued. I took out some basic knights to find the compass. There were quite a few keys I needed here, and quite a few to pick up. At a branch in the path, I took the direction that led to the boss, the multi-headed dragon, and died immediately with only 1 heart left upon entry. The other direction was the mini-boss, and the map, and a wall that I thought for sure could be bombed, but it didn't break. I couldn't find the item here. I wanted to know if it would be the flute, since that was the only other lead I had to a dungeon. I spent quite a bit of time and looked everywhere. I decided I really wanted to keep making progress, so I broke down and just checked what I was missing. It turned out there was a new mechanic here. I needed to walk through a false wall instead of bomb it. It was exactly in the spot I thought it would be, but I don't think I ever would have found this on my own. A first warning sign on the direction things were going. The item did turn out to be the flute, so now I could go back to the old level 2 location and see if it worked. I tried to continue on to kill the boss first, but it was tough, with 4 hearts and a long path back after each try. I had a lot of other stuff to search, so I headed back outside. I started toward the mountains, found that level 7 wasn't where it used to be. The flute did nothing there this time around. The burnt forest maze had the same path through, and in the graveyard beyond, the magical sword seemed to have moved location. While here, I checked the other mysterious grave that doesn't spawn a ghost, that I never figured out the first time around. This time, it suddenly and easily pushed aside and revealed a cave with a heart container. This gave me 5 hearts already, so I headed toward the waterfall to see about the white sword upgrade. Cutting through the mountains without a magical shield was probably a bad idea, but I tried anyway. Level 6 wasn't where it used to be, and instead held a cave with some rubies. I checked statues along the way and found the power bracelet in the same, or pretty much the same spot it was originally. I checked the hidden cave shop that had the magic shield for 90 rubies previously, and it was still there. I grabbed that. The shop also had the bait this time around for 100 rubies, which I couldn't quite afford. I came back to get that a little bit later. I reached the waterfall, and the white sword was there as it always had been, and 5 hearts was still enough to grab it, so that was going to be a big help. The mountain maze beyond had the same path through, just like the burnt forest, but there was only a fairy fountain beyond, no dungeon. I also stopped by the potion recipe cave and found that wasn't there either. I continued on to that special screen high up in the mountains with the trees and rock arrows. I thought for sure there must be something here this time if there wasn't last time. I did find a cave, but it held only the potion recipe. Still, very handy. While up in this area, I checked the level 9 location, but the entrance was no longer there. The rock arrow pointing to it from the east did have a new block to push, which revealed the magical sword. That would be critical when I can get it, but that'll be a while. I was pretty sure with the white sword I could bully my way through the level 2 boss, but since I was outside, I went to check the old level 2 location, as was my original goal. The flute did work here, and revealed level 3 just like it had revealed level 7 originally, so I dove in. Around this time, I tried using the bait as a normal item, and found it was reusable, and seemingly pretty useful. It seemed to distract many, but not all, types of enemies, and get them to move toward it instead of me on a screen. Unfortunately, another hungry gorilla soon blocked my path in the dungeon, and I had to give up the bait for now. Overall, level 3 was pretty straightforward and fairly small. The only tricky thing was finding a hidden staircase to the final couple of rooms, but the block switch was in a familiar location, on a familiar screen. The item here was the magical boomerang, which wasn't that useful to gain access to anything new. Uniquely, it turned out there was no boss here, at least not guarding the Triforce room. I realized I hadn't gotten a heart container since there'd been no boss to fight. The only enemies I hadn't killed were 3 Dodongos that seemed like a waste of bombs when I passed by them. I headed back, and sure enough, once they were taken care of, they dropped a heart container. With level 3 complete, and no other clear leads, I headed back to the level 2 boss. With more hearts and the white sword, it didn't pose too much trouble this time. It also didn't reveal anything new, despite another heart container. I didn't have the raft to check the old level 4 location, but levels 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 had all proven to be in different locations, and I had no idea where. I checked most of the landmarks I could remember. I wandered around for quite a while longer, but found little more for my trouble. I was stuck, truly, for the second time in this second quest. There are no real clues in this mode. You have to know how the game hides things, but without some kind of indicator, there are also many rocks, trees, and walls to search. Just like the heart containers I left behind on the first run, I didn't really want to go brute force checking everything, especially with only the blue candle. With my interest starting to wane, and having already looked up the trick to find the level 2 item location, I went ahead and looked up the location of level 4. It turned out it was under a rock on the mountain maze screen. I just hadn't checked, even though it was one of the easier and more obvious things to check. So be it. Let's see how it is. All I could hope for was the raft, so I could sail from the docks and see what they led to. I think the search for level 4 was a bit of a turning point in my experience when things really started to feel kind of tedious. Level 4 itself would cement this. I quickly found the first unlighted rooms I'd encountered. I had been saving all the money I could so far, so I didn't actually have the blue candle yet. I went to buy it and returned. I made some progress and found the item room holding the magic book. Another item not really useful at all to me yet, maybe ever. Combat encounters got intense, with rooms full of blue knights. And then it got worse. Rooms with stun orbs and limited movement options proved pretty frustrating. There seemed to be a new mechanic with the stun orbs, and after some experimentation, I decided the red orbs were disabling my attack, not just for a few seconds, but permanently. I had to run into a blue stun orb to re-enable it. Dealing with the many knights and the stun orbs was not super fun. I didn't really think there was anything to master here. I had to just survive long enough to get a bit lucky so I could employ my good old tactics for taking the knights out. Many of these rooms really dragged on, running in circles trying to avoid things and get my attack back at the right time to actually do some damage. I stuck it out for a while and actually got pretty far, but the more I had to redo these rooms, the more I kind of lost interest. There were quite a few fake walls to walk through and some to bomb. A hidden room held the first bomb upgrade that I bought immediately to increase my limit to 12. I also found the first clue I'd seen in the second quest, which was, if you go in the direction of the arrow. This seems like it could refer to a number of places, but I certainly thought of the couple locations in the mountains I'd already found that now held the magical sword and potion recipe. It didn't seem to apply directly to the dungeon itself. Fighting through a really tough room at the northern edge of the dungeon, I found the map, which led me to another tough fight and some fake walls to an old man that offered me a choice. Pay a heart container or 50 rubies to proceed. I had just under 50 rubies at the time, so I needed to leave and return. I don't know if the heart container means a permanent health loss, but the icon on the screen was clearly a heart container and not just current health. I would never want to reduce my max life. Realizing I could simply quit the game without saving, I tried taking the heart container, since it was the only way to progress. Sure enough, it did reduce my maximum health. I don't know if you can get it back later, but regardless, it was a bad feeling. This was the only path deeper into the dungeon, however. There was another Digdogger here, and these things were nasty. Splitting into 3 smaller enemies when using the flute, they moved fast, took 4 hits each to kill even with the white sword, and dealt 2 hearts of damage per touch to me, meaning I died in 3 hits even with full health. Meanwhile, fire statues slinging stuff all over the place. My run ended here, and I didn't really feel like continuing, at least not this time. If or when I do continue, I think I would head back outside and search the overworld for an item like the blue ring to help my survivability. There's no guarantee I would find it, or that I could reach it currently. I might look for a shorter path back to this deep area of the dungeon to retry the fights with higher health and more quickly. Such a path might not exist though. There was some indication that level 4 might hold the raft as well as the magic book, because some dungeon screens required it to pass. So that would open some next options to explore, but I'd have to get through the fight that killed me last to find it most likely. With a lot of other things to play, both modern and retro, I think I need to give this Zelda a break. My growing concern at this point in the second quest is that there are few clues to direct my actions, meaning I have to spend a lot more time blindly searching for things. And even doing that, there are like 5 dungeons and some key items I haven't found. Unlike the last few heart containers in my first run that I just left behind without consequence really, I can't progress without finding these. I don't enjoy the thought of scouring every overworld screen. The new mechanic of walking directly through a wall was something I just don't think I ever would have found on my own. Then there's the amped up combat and encounter design. Things were clearly harder, but level 4 really pushed things into pretty grueling territory, and harder combat wasn't something I was really looking for, since I found it a weaker part of the game that doesn't give you too many options. So, I think that may be it for me and the second quest for now. I might chip away at it here and there, but I have an awful lot of things I want to play. I had a great time with the first quest through Zelda. I wanted to challenge myself to get through it, and I was able to. Now it's time to figure out what's next. I've got some ideas. I hope you'll tune in the future if you're curious. There's surely to be more retro stuff, of course, as well as other things. Until then, and as always, thanks so much for tuning in, and take care.